Now, I'm stating my motives up front.
Yeah.
This one is not just for my curiosity, but this one is for both the past who has read it and the future who desperately needs to read it. You, Gloria, have written many, many wonderful things. I have enjoyed all of them, but I have enjoyed this the most. I have probably passed out 40 or 50 copies of this to friends who have laughed harder than I have ever seen them laughing.
Oh my God. And this was so many years ago.
This was about 20 easily.
Oh my God. Okay, I have it.
Now, let's start with, for the sake of the future, and for all of Gloria's fans who are not going to get the kind of access that I've had, because at some point in time, this will be on her YouTube channel, I'm talking about an article that she wrote for Prometheus. Prometheus is the magazine for members of the Eulenspiegel Society, also known as TESS. This was Prometheus more years ago than God could probably count. And Gloria did an editorial / essay that was only one page. And she called it The Pretenders. Now, the only way to understand this, because I have questions, not just his friend, but his fangirl, is to either have it read to you or read it. Since most have not read it, I'm about to put the author on the horn to see if I can get her to read it.
You know, this will be the first time I've even looked at it in 20-something years. The only reason I have a copy is because of you, my dearest Viola.
This was probably incidental to you, in terms of more than likely you were venting, and we're going to get to that after you've read this.
It was like 700 words or something. Do you know how many words I write every day?
It is brilliant. It is historical. It is hysterical. And from the lips of the author herself, The Pretenders.
The Pretenders. Those of us who haven't been them have certainly met them. It's hard not to notice them. They act so haughtily self-important. They often wear a dour expression and insulate themselves with a small coterie of worshipful hangers-on. Their dresses quite often impressive, all the best gear worn in all the right places. By their very manner, they advertise the superiority and vast experience that have made them the titans of today's S&M world. Who are they? Let me put it as bluntly as possible. 9 times out of 10, they're con artists. Pretenders, Class A. I was talking to my good friends, the Emperor, the Goddess, the Duchess, and the Lord the other day. Sounds rather like a title of a bad Peter Greenaway movie, doesn't it? What? You don't know the Emperor, the Goddess, or any of the myriad European nobility who have graced the scene with their near divine presence? How can it be? Are you sure you're a real sadomasochist? I don't think one can be a sadomasochist anymore unless one anoints oneself with some utterly fabulous title recently plucked from one's royal arse. Ladies and gentlemen, beware the titled classes. Take special heed of the leather household deities. They have spent too much time reading Harlequin romances and not enough breathing oxygen.
Keep going. There's
I would never write this today, but okay. Pretender. We don't have that much nobility anymore. It was a thing back then.
I don't qualify yet. You're getting ahead of my questions.
Okay. Pretenders, class B. I was trained in the Brooklyn tradition. I'm sure you've heard about the infamous dens of perversion that once flowered in the dark corners of Brooklyn, itself a hotbed of notorious libertinism throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. Unbeknownst to the public, a secret cult of sadomasochists has carried on the tradition from our ancestors, and I am fully trained in its mysteries and rituals. My mentor was High Archduke Guido, Lord of Flatbush. You've never heard of him because he's so old now that he never leaves the dungeon, where dozens of slaves attend his every whim. Besides, no one but myself and a handful of my Brooklyn brothers and sisters, naturally I can't reveal their names or addresses, even know about High Guido. We are sworn to secrecy because in real life, High Guido is a very famous guy. Of course, I can't tell you what he's famous for, or you'd know who he is. However, rest assured, he's famous, really. Everyone knows him. Your mother probably knows him. Even Bill Clinton knows him. That's all I can say for now. You ought to create a tradition for yourself sometime. God knows it's easy enough to do, particularly if the members, leaders, and club location can never be verified by anyone else. Once you've created your tradition, all you need to do is find a novice who believes in fairy tales, as apparently most novices do. And you're all set. Now you can train them in this tradition you created. And once that happens, voila, an ipso facto tradition. And you did it all yourself. Cool, huh? By the way, if you're from Ohio and looking for a more romantic tradition, I hear Slovenia is available. The Pretenders, Class C. My husband, Will, an archaeologist, used to speak of launching an expedition to find what he called the Great Submissive Graveyard. A whole lot of dominants claim to have had slaves who up and died on them. They got to be planted somewhere, he sourly noted, in response to repeatedly hearing nearly identical stories from some self-proclaimed lifelong lifestylers of whom no one had ever heard. Today, we must also search for the Great Dominant Graveyard, as so many subs now claim to have been extensively trained by dominants who molder in unmarked graves as well. Or to paraphrase the child in The Sixth Sense, they see dead people all the time. Imaginary friends are a lovely touch when inventing your own tradition. Pretend now, pay later. There are people in the scene who deserve to be called by the titles they use. There are people who indeed are parts of clubs and leather families that have protocols. And there are far, far too many of us who have lost friends and lovers to tragic diseases and circumstances. But for the most part, those people don't rub your nose in it, much less try to convince you that you should hold them in awe. In my experience, the most serious and realist people out there are the humblest, because they respect the titles they've earned. They do not flaunt them or use them to cow clueless newbies. They have friends who vouch for them, leather families who support them, and traditions which have been recorded and probably cataloged at the leather archives. The next time someone tells you about their anonymous friends, their unknown and unverifiable traditions, not to mention their personal relationship with the czar, please tell them to pack up their imaginary friends and go home. Otherwise, that happily ever after you're hoping for is likely to turn into a truly grim fairy tale.
Gloria, is there a date on that magazine?
I don't believe they did, because the tricky thing BDSMers did is they never had regular publishing schedules.
Of course not. But
So they just numbered them. So this was number 36.
I was hoping in the copyright page somewhere there was a date.
Let me go. I'm going to guess. Yeah, you would think so.
I would hope. No
Date of
word.
publication, December 2000.
Okay, so we're talking 21 years ago.
21
Our
years
world
ago.
was very different.
Very.
I'm saying that as the warning or preface, whichever way you want to put it. Now, the question I have wanted to ask you for years, what the hell prompted that? And it was brilliant.
Okay, so it was what I'd call the first wave of the internet generation. Right? I mean, by that point, people who were born then never knew a time when there wasn't an internet.
True.
And all of their parents were getting online. So everybody was, what we were seeing was kind of a surge, but also what I, as a sexologist, viewed at the time as people still being really ashamed of being into this kind of shit, but being drawn into the community and feeling like they had to desexualize it a lot. Because there were a lot of other trends going on. Like maybe you heard the expression of people saying, instead of saying I played with them, I worked with them, especially when they do bondage. And I remember, I was pretty old guard. So, nowadays I'm way more open, but at the time thinking, this is work to you? Either A, can I have that job? Or how could, this is not work. This is fun. And it's
Right?
intimacy. And it's all the gushy emotions that go with all of that. And the happy. And the laughing. Not the, but then I was never that kind of, dom who never smiled. I thought all femdoms, before I got in the scene, I thought femdoms can't ever smile again. They always looked unhappy to me. They were trying to be stern. And that was, I'm a goofball, right? Part nerd, part goofy. And
I like it.
So you're gone. But yeah, we so there were like these disturbing trends. And another trend was suddenly it was like everybody was super dumb king black, master. Or everybody was goddess this and goddess that. And it's a funny thing because when I got into S&M, I thought the whole, you got to call somebody mistress and master was kind of weird and dumb. And I thought it emulated slavery. And I was not really into that of the kind that I knew as in my social consciousness. That was another turnoff. But then I came to understand, no, you can be a person's mistress or master, but you can't just be a mistress or master in the world. That's ridiculous. I mean, that can be your official name. I accept Master Tano and Master Skip, and that's their public, if you will, handle in the scene, and that's fine. But they don't think that they dom you when they meet you. And we do have seen a lot of people who think, you can't talk to me like a normal human being. I'm a master or a mistress. So I really didn't like that. And the royal titles were hilarious. And Will had a good bit of negative experience, and so did I, meeting these guys who were always like, oh, I had the best slave in the world from the time I was 18 to 30, but then she died tragically. And yeah, I haven't been doing S&M until last year.
Uh-huh.
Or yes, I had partners, but they would never want me to share their name, which may be true. But at some point, it all just starts sounding like bullshit.
Hear, hear.
And of course, we also, and it's still going on, in fact, somebody caused outrage, at least in the gay leather portion of the scene some years ago, because, there were a lot of people who were just like QAnoning us, if you will. They had mystic cults, or they had royal origins, or there was this one book that one person in Atlanta had physically seen, but it was burned, and it contained all the magic noble rituals of the house of the European house.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Boston a move would have been easier, but burned, I'll accept. All right.
And these mythos and this distancing from the sexual thrill of what we do and the erotic importance of what we do and the radical honesty we should be bringing to it. It pissed me off. What can I say? It pissed me off. And I adapted it, or originally wrote it for Prometheus. I forget how it worked, but I have a version of this, or similar things, in my book, Come Hither, because this was a guide, and I didn't want it to just be, this shit is the greatest thing you've ever done, and oh my God, the opportunities for self-growth, for sexual growth, for spiritual growth, for everything. If you want it to be your journey, it will be your journey. I mean, not everybody does make it, but those of us who pursue education, pay attention,
Yeah.
research, and by research, what I mean is just because one leader, even me, or mom Vi, but there are other truths out there, and you need to listen to all of them, because I'm a white Jewish lady, and Vi is a beautiful Black lady, and you need to hear from other voices, other colors, other shades, other belief systems, other genders, all the genders, because everybody has different narratives. So that's really important. But the whole idea is we should be trying to be the person we say we are. And I personally, I just don't have room in my life for people who are either delusional enough to believe that they are really are all that. Let's just put it simply, that they really are all that they really are better than other people, that they really, everyone has to treat them in a certain way, you know, those people. I just don't have time for them, and you know, I just don't have time for them because I feel that they're just interfering with people's journeys. Let me put it that way.
Well said.
Interfering with what could be a much happier metamorphosis.
Now, was there one particular incident, conversation, piss off, help with the newbie? Was there a spark for this? Because this sounds like a stream of consciousness rant, which is part of what makes it so brilliant.
Well, I had
happen?
her, all of those things happened. All of those things, you know, I knew a small group of people who were doing a lot of bondage, and they all called it work in Atlanta. I knew a particular person in Atlanta who was creating her own false traditions, going by a noble handle. And I felt doing a huge disservice in creating this whole little mini cult of bullshit. Because there, you know, we were really devastated by AIDS in the Atlanta community, because it really was the gay men leading it in Atlanta, no doubt, with assist from the leather lesbians, you know, and for a long time, very queer spaces rather than, you know, PEP changed that. PEP created a space that felt more welcoming to heteros, I think.
Okay.
You know, so you know how it was in the early days, queer here, straight kind of there. And then
LA came creeping in with, we're not sure
well,
what we are.
and then there would be just like one club, and we'd all go to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There'd be like, you had your choice of 2 clubs. So you either went to the club that ended up being het bi, or you went to the club that ended up being gay bi. You know, wherever you were welcome. I actually felt more welcome in gay clubs, so that's where I went.
Yeah. Until MLA came along, because PEP never made, it just didn't feel that friendly to me. It felt like too many guys looking around hoping they could get a scene. And they'd put up with the education for the playtime.
Yeah, there's that, but so what? Who can blame them?
Well, I didn't say I blamed them. It was just always, there were times when I was there just to be social, you know, to enjoy good company and good friends rather than being gawked at, drooled all over, you know, with a whole bunch of puppies who couldn't get a word out other than,
You know, I've just never had a problem with being drooled over.
Yeah, but see, you're a cute, adorable little femme. There are times when I just want good conversation.
No, I always want good conversation.
You know, rather than someone who could not put more than 2 words together to create a sentence while he's slobbering down his shirt.
Mm-hmm. Well, here it is. I think what you're asking me is why this piece. And I think one thing that I say is just let BDSM be what it is. Don't attach your crazy religious beliefs to it. Okay, don't, you know, we're really very simple and have very integrated principles, you know, things like honesty, loyal, honor, discretion. You know, it's a whole core of values that we allegedly learned as children. Well, we actually take that seriously. And not lying, for example. So, because, you know, in BDSM, it's critical. Somebody lies to you, you can hurt them. I mean, injure them, put them in the hospital, you know? I mean, you take somebody with arthritis and they don't tell you they have arthritis, and you put them on their knees and 20 minutes into it, they're like, I can't get up again.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you owe it to yourself as a player always to be honest, you know? And that should extend into everything, the claims you make about yourself, the things you do, you know, the things you don't do. And sure, we all like to puff up a little bit and promote ourselves, but not beyond the reasonable. And it's simply not reasonable to believe there's this ancient history of S&M houses. You know what there was? There were people like us who always liked S&M since the beginning of time, and they probably played with their friends. And that's about as romantic as it gets.
Well, all in all, that's not bad.
No, so if they were rich people and nobility, sure, they probably had really fucking awesome parties.
Look at the original health.
They didn't teach their children to carry on the tradition. That's you don't teach your kids to, you know, do you invite them in to watch you fuck to carry on the fucking tradition? I mean, come on.
Thank you. If for no other reason, they'll figure that out on their own.
Yeah.
You know, yes, I now know third generation perverts. They became third generation perverts because they were stealing the magazines of the second generation when daddy didn't know that mommy didn't know that the magazines she kept under lock and key were disappearing two at a time because the kids knew where the key was.
I once had a friend, totally straight, but he knew about me. And he was giving me a tour of his house. And when we came to his daughter's room, he apologized to me because his son had tied up all the Barbies and put them in bondage positions. And that kid knew what bondage positions were.
I'm impressed.
And he apologized. And then he said, do you think it means anything? And I'm like,
what, you didn't tell him the truth? Yes, it does. Now, either he's...
I think I just nodded and said probably. I didn't know him in any kind. I knew him only in the straightest possible context. This was before I was a sexologist. I was out, but not something we discussed. But he probably was like, she'd know. I think it happens. It happened for me. I did mean things to my dollies. I was a bad child. I hurt my dollies.
No, not even a glimpse. I became a card-carrying pervert because of Jill.
Really?
I have joked in many interviews, and this last one that we actually did together for MSC, I looked over and said, Dr. Frankenstein, I hope you're proud of your monster.
That's cool.
Not a clue.
Yeah, but you were still babies when you met.
Yeah. 21.
Yep. Yep.
You know, I didn't even know what a sexual fantasy was. And it was explained, and I went, now it makes even less sense. You know, the first time she talked to me about what was going on, I went, why are you fantasizing about it instead of just doing it? If you want a hamburger, you don't fantasize it, it's a steak. If you want a steak, go get a steak. You don't have to daydream about it, just go do it. And she looked at me like I had lost my mind, and I looked at her like she had lost hers. And as a matter of fact, I can honestly say we didn't come to a meeting of the minds over the concept of fantasy for about 10 years.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I'm going, why are you having daydreams about something you could just go out and do? Now, if it comes up that you're in the middle of your work day, and all of a sudden thoughts of whomever come crossing your mind, and you are having a daydream about what's going to happen when you get home, that's a whole different ballgame. But just to spin a fantasy around something you could make reality so easily, why bother? It's extra work. Just go do it. She thought I was overly practical, and I thought she had her head in the clouds. It took us a while to kind of come together on that one.
Right.
But you said something early on that you wouldn't write this today.
Mm-hmm.
Why or why not? And what would you substitute? Because you said something similar was in Come Hither.
I've actually been writing a little bit about this subject. You know, now I'm a therapist. Okay. So I've learned a lot from being a therapist. And one thing I've learned is trying to be kinder and more patient to people.
Fascinating.
So rather than mock them, I want to show them how they can do better.
Okay. But
it was hilarious, yes. It was a fun read. I know. This is always a question for me. How far down do I dial myself for public consumption? Because the real Gloria, as you may know, is really radical.
It's one of the things I love about you.
I mean, Lefty doesn't cover it. So, my parents raised me as an atheist. And they were socialists. So right away, everything about society always looked totally wrong to me. And I worship only one American hero. Well, Martin Luther King. And his death fucked me up and made me really angry. Because I thought he was the only truly valuable social servant. I've grown, of course, to learn there were, oh my God, so many more. And I love Rosa Parks. And, you know, can't say that about a lot of people, because a lot of people to me were very mixed. You know, they did good things, but they did bad things too. But, you know, or they followed one path and then they changed their tune, and that was okay. But it's kind of how I feel about like these anti-gay conservatives who then one day say, well, I'm gay now, so I'm sorry for what I did. You know, I feel like it's a trust issue.
Or they're screaming anti-gay while they're in the legislature and going out with their boyfriend at night to clubs.
Right. You know, so we've had a lot of people come and go in our history, and most people are not perfect. And I'm not suggesting that Reverend King was perfect as a human being, but as a leader, he was unreal. And as a brain, I mean,
yes,
God, I mean, he was a genius.
He has a wonderful combination of education, writing skill, and Black Baptist delivery.
He did.
Because
he made you get up on your feet.
That delivery with natural charisma can make the average person go, yes, when they're not even sure what they just said yes to.
He had so much passion. Yeah. So So, you know, it was this weird kind of thing, but so I could be saying controversial things every day and then getting people on the internet would be really pissed off at me. And
Hear, hear.
is it worth it? That's not the
Sometimes
kind of fame. What I've always wanted my whole life was actually not to be out front, but to have my writing be out front. To write it in a way that it would be accessible to all readers. I mean, people who really like to read and like to have books to think about, and let them draw from my work what they can, not what I'm telling them they have to. So, I'm not there to preach a gospel. I'm there to tell you what I know as best I know it.
I hear you. I agree with you, but there are times when the writing can't be the only thing that speaks for you.
No.
There are times when you gotta go public. Basically your face just has to be seen. And that is true of many brilliant minds, in that I can read a book and it may move me or make me think. I can probably have a discussion with a small group of friends about the ideals or ideas or even a particular passage that moved me. But in this new electronic age, the person or persons I'm talking to want to see who I'm talking about.
Understood.
And see in terms of not just having the visual. That's a political comment, isn't it? Not
They're
just
supporting you.
See, I knew that. Not just having the visual, but also, thanks to this great electronic medium, feeling like they can reach out and touch. And that's one of the reasons that, yeah.
I'm booping your nose. I'm booping your nose.
Little higher up. Little higher up. Much better.
Okay.
That the program is wonderful, but Gloria's just here talking about something makes you accessible, even if it's just in the minds of those who follow you. Every once in a while, she comes out of the little rabbit hole and goes, hi. And today I was thinking about, and you're not going to believe what caused it, and how do you feel about that? And you do that on your page. You do that on Facebook. But every once in a while, that Facebook Live or something like this on your own YouTube channel, or even putting the blasted thing on a Facebook video that your fans can reach out and touch, because they're not, reading is formatted, sculpted, tuned, and edited to get to a certain point. While it's brilliance and necessity, I'm not in any way disparaging. The humanity is what makes people follow. When I finally started,
I'm just trying to,
when I finally started studying storytelling, because I've started teaching a very small, almost one-on-one class on storytelling, aiming toward griots rather than just storytellers. Young lady whose name I cannot remember now said, you can go to a lecture and you will remember the first 7 minutes. After that, you automatically take notes to go back to later. You can read a book, and if you read from an academic perspective, you will underline and go back and look at it later. But if you engage with a storyteller, you will be engaged for potentially hours without your brain ever turning off. It is the difference between the emotional and the academic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Facebook has given us a kind of middle ground, as Facebook and now Instagram and so on. But you got to step into that middle ground more. Yes, I'm privileged. And am I more than willing to abuse that privilege? Yes. Gloria, what do you think of, and get on and let my thumbs do the talking? But I guess
People who've known me for 30 years are allowed to abuse the friendship privilege. It's a rule. If you've tolerated me for this long and followed me,
there is a tremendous joy in being able to look and listen, not just read. For me, it's a direct pleasure. For your fans, it's a vicarious pleasure. But it's a different pleasure than just the written word. Now that I've dumped that back in your lap.
Is there a question? Well, I do plan to put everything we tape here onto my YouTube channel as maybe an appetizer, but maybe the full course of what I post, depending on how much of this you plan to abuse.
I'm thinking
how long you plan to abuse me.
Now that I've abused you 3 weeks in a row and I've got an event coming up that I won't be back until Wednesday for, I'm thinking twice a month. Just
okay.
Lunch with Gloria.
Cool. All right. I ate my crackers like a good dominant.
Yes. You have been healthier on occasion, but crackers are a good start. Coffee is always, the elixir of life.
Yes, it is. Chin chin.
But I have a feeling your fans would come unglued if they thought that they could get an emotional link to you through someone else twice a month. Wait, hold it. Is she coming on yet? When's your program? Let's put it in your schedule. The fact that they can go back and watch it later is immaterial. Whoa, she's on. I can see her face.
I would put it, in fact, I would run the video. Once they're ready, I'll run them on my blog too. So we'll see.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You do realize my feet under the desk are doing like a happy dance.
We'll see. Can they handle the real me? Can they? Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. People are looking for the.
I will tell you one tiny morsel that I think says a lot about me because I thought it was funny. I went to a big party with Jen's family, and most of her, and she has a huge family, not quite as big as yours, but she has a pretty big family, and everybody had come in for this party. And this was the first time all her aunts and uncles were meeting me. And one of the aunts who follows me on Facebook said, "You're so much bigger on the internet." And I wasn't sure if she was referring to my height or the fact that I just, I'm always cracking people up and making sick jokes and then writing deep content on my blog and then going off and making goofy jokes again, and to her, I had like this huge personality, and I don't know what she was expecting, but in person, you've met me, I'm a little reserved, maybe.
Well, for one thing, you're little.
And I'm tiny. Yes, I am tiny. I accept that. I'm 5 foot tall.
What are you, 5'1", maybe?
5, barely.
So
Yeah.
by 1, actually, no.
I'm a little taller than Molly.
Which isn't saying much. Molly's tiny.
Yeah, Molly's tiny.
I'm trying to remember the standard for the Society of Little People, whether or not
Hey!
it's 11 or 5 foot.
I think it's 4'8".
Okay, so you just missed.
I did just miss it, yes.
I remember reading that once and going, wait a minute, I got about 15% of my friends who fit that category.
My father was 5'6" and my mother thought he was tall.
5'6", so you're missing at least 3 inches to average that out?
No, my mom was 4'10".
Oh, good Lord. And you just decided to follow your mom.
Unfortunately.
Okay, at 4'10", 5'6" is gigantic.
Right. She's like, your father's so nice and tall. I'm like, what?
Well, wait a minute. You're the wrong one to talk. He had 6 inches on you.
Not when I wore those crazy 1970s platform shoes. Clunk, clunk, clunk.
Never mind. Okay. Never mind.
Remember those?
Unfortunately, yes. I refused to wear them because I couldn't stand the way they felt, mostly because I've grown up flat-footed.
Yeah.
And, heels were something I only had to do to go to work in. But Jill loved them and said she refused to throw a pair out because the leather kids teased her in the 80s. So she kept one pair.
That's adorable.
That's up in her closet. I've said, are these a trophy? Do you want me to frame them? Can I put a plant in them? What's the scoop here? God, they were ugly.
They probably just crack her up, every time she sees them. Yeah, I get that. Yep.
So you went from 5 foot to almost a normal height.
No, because all the other girls had them too. So I was still the shrimp,
Never mind.
Okay. So, that's weird, the way people react to me. They see a tiny little Jewish girl with big tits and they make an assumption, and I'm always friendly, So nobody really took me seriously until I was an adult. Except teachers.
I can see that.
Teachers were nice.
I can definitely see that.
But nobody else.
To some
That's how I
extent.
remember my childhood.
You pardon me?
Oops. Too much. TMI.
You got it. Books
Okay.
are important.
Another time. I'm transparent about my whole life. I really am. I may be misrepresenting it because I'm representing it through my memories and my narrative, but
True
there
for
it
all
is.
of us.
But yeah. Oh no, I didn't like being a kid. I was just waiting to grow up.
My mother swore I came out an adult. You were born at 40. I'm going, no, I was born when you were 40. There's a difference. But I guess some of us just buried ourselves in whatever until nature caught up with us.
Until we saw our own path out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do have an old soul.
I have a feeling with you, it was just until nature caught up.
No. And I had a lot of overcoming to do. It didn't even itself out. Really, I would say pretty much until I got into BDSM. Because I saw the whole world in, my very skewed heteronormative way. I always was fascinated by gay and bi people, but I didn't realize it was because I was queer. So a lot of my friends were gay or bi, and I had bi experiences, but there was really no language for the way I was doing it.
True. Very true.
It was more like circumstantial.
Circumstantial or like seeking like?
Both. It was both, or early queerdar, kinkdar,
Yes.
or tending to like guys who were outsiders and girls who were outsiders because I felt like an outsider.
Makes sense.
And never being afraid of men. So I would do some really stupid things and, but then I had to deal with the repercussions of the unhappy childhood, which was my 20s.
Now, you said never afraid of men or just fearless in general?
Well, I would say fearful and yet reckless at the same time.
Interesting choice of the word reckless.
I was one of those crazy kids that used to ride between subway cars and see how far my legs could stretch out when the cars pulled apart. That was a very, New York
okay.
borough thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like going over the Brooklyn Bridge, or was it the Manhattan Bridge? Manhattan Bridge was where the train went, and going off with men I just met to really weird, shady places.
Yeah, I'm willing to confess to just a little of that.
All right.
Men and women.
I mean, I was a street urchin. I really, I spent every day trying to get away, trying to find a place to go that wasn't home. And I had all of New York City to visit.
And it's a hell of a playground. There is a little part of me going, I'm surprised we never ran into each other in and out, crawling either in and out of musical clubs, because I was constantly sneaking in the nightclubs when I was underage. Not because I wanted to drink, but because I wanted to hear the music. I didn't care if I had a Coke or an orange juice. Just, can I sit in the back and listen? Can I stand in the door? Just please don't throw me out. There's really good stuff going on in there. What did I know? I just wanted to hear the music.
Right.
Or creeping in and out of the Met and, accidentally didn't hear them say the museum is closing.
Yeah.
They never destroyed anything, and they usually figured out I was in there sometime about an hour after the museum had closed. Until certain guards pretty much knew where the kid was going to be if they'd seen me come in.
Pretty great.
They'd go check the Egyptian wing, usually one or two of the small temples, where, they had the temples set up in the museum before Egypt sent them the two from Dendera. And go, she's in here somewhere. Nobody saw her go out. She said, "Where are?" Hi. And then I'd get marched to the side door and lovingly thrown out. Okay. You know.
Yep. And life was ever so much cheaper. And there were so many things you could do for free. You know?
Yeah. From
I used to go to the cloisters. And even if I couldn't afford to go inside, just to be up there and be in that park and wander around was pretty cool. And it was about as far away from where I lived as I could imagine at the time.
See, I'd go creeping into the museums, occasionally creeping into the old Brooklyn Museum.
Oh, love that museum.
Oh.
Yeah.
Childhood. Actually,
All right.
stupid.
So where are you off to now?
Okay. We are going to Ramblewood. I have to think of the name of the campground. Running off to Ramblewood for Women of Drummer.
Nice.
And trying to remember, since I'm doing literally the fireside chat, this time with Pam Myers. Last year, Judy and I did it together, Tolling. And I did it together. And I forgot how many stories she could actually tell about me.
Tape that.
Pam doesn't have that luxury about me, although I do. I have some knowledge with Pam because she and Jill are both IMSLs. So they share a certain amount of the stories that go along with the sisterhood. So I've got to pack up all the things that I never think about. Okay, where's the sleeping bag? Where are the sheets? Where's the, that you never think about when you're home.
Right.
As well as this time, I think I'm going to grab some t-shirts and get Pam to talk about some of those as well.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So it's hanging out with the youngins, relaxing a little because I love being at Ramblewood because normally I don't have to do anything. I can be there, enjoy the next generation, sit back, relax, grab a golf cart, go running down to the lake when I just want to be away from everybody and sit for about 20 minutes and watch the eagles overhead.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So off for 4 days at Camp Ramblewood.
All right. All right. So we'll do this again in 2 weeks.
When I think I'm going to ask you about what you believe are leftist leanings, I find you a logical centrist. You say you're a leftist.
Yeah.
So we will be debating leftist or logical centrist.
Well, to me, it's all very logical. But to other people, it's like, what?
To most,
To me, I'm a very integrated system.
I like that. As a matter of fact,
Sexual agency above all.
Making a note for next time.
Economic equality for all.
From your lips to God's ears. But until 2 weeks.
She doesn't listen to me.
Why not? I thought you had a direct connection.
I'm an atheist. What's the
That
difference?
gives us the best connections.
Maybe it is. My garden is my church. My garden is my church.
Yours and mine as well.
I pray in the garden. It doesn't matter who hears it or if anyone does.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I will have to send you pictures of mine if you send me pictures of yours.
Okay.
Because I definitely pray in my garden. And by the way, I think atheists, because we are far enough away from the bullshit regulations of man's nonsense about religion, you usually have better connections to the universe, however we choose to describe it. But that's a whole different conversation.
That's a whole different conversation.
But for now, Gloria, I am about to end this recording, assuming I can remember where the button is.